All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rutgers Rant. We are all here. Politi, Lanny, Fonseca. Good to see you guys. It was good to see you in the press box. It felt like, it was just nice. Nice to have you at the spring game. How you doing?
It was great to be back where we all belong together. It felt like the last 6 months just didn't go by, and we were, talking about some exciting football all over again. It felt like home.
Yes, reunited, and it feels so good.
Right, everyone wants to get rid of the spring game. I say keep it.
Absolutely. Get rid of the spring game. What the hell's wrong with people? More football's better than less football. All right. Let's talk about that. We got a lot of cover in the show. We're gonna get the basketball, the portal news, everything that's happening in that program. I think we should start with football because we had something to watch, which was good. And I don't know if I learned a lot about what this team's going to look like in the fall, but I feel like you did learn a lot about what this program's going to look like in the coming years. I like what I saw. AJ Surace is the easy place to start here, fellas. As much as I want to create a quarterback controversy, I'm dying to create a quarterback controversy. There's no quarterback controversy, right? It's Ethan Kelly manages job. I get it, but still, my God, the ball flies off AJ Surace's hand. He's not afraid to throw into coverage. He just looks really good. I get it, spring game. I understand that, but we don't get a lot of glimpses of this kid in real game action. He's the future.
Yeah, to your point, it's important to set the stage that he was throwing against second or third string defensive backs. He was throwing to true freshman wide receivers. It's a spring game, so I'm not sure how intense the action is. All those caveats, right? Still, I think you liked what you saw from AJ Surace. If that was that was really the only thing worth watching in the spring game. I think you come out encouraged, right? That, here's the thing. No matter who won the backup quarterback battle, whoever it was, if heaven forbid they had to play this fall, I don't think they'd be able to salvage anything, really. I don't think they're ready to be a starting quarterback in the Big Ten. But knowing that AJ Surace is the expected starter in a year, you have to love where he is in his progression. And then when we talk to him afterwards, you have to like the way he kind of handles his business and views the situation, right? He says he's a very process-oriented guy. And to that point, I feel like he's right on pace of where he needs to be in his personal process and his development.
Yeah, that's the whole thing for me. It's like Rutgers had this plan for AJ Surace from the beginning and has stuck to it and executed it all along. Obviously, there was that little injury setback last year that kept him out, a few weeks, but everything has kind of gone according to plan. And that's probably the best thing for a kid that needed a year to get into the system, get a little bigger physically. And one thing, maybe not a lot of people know that AJ Surace, you saw it a little bit in the spring game and not so much. He can move. He's not going to be a guy that's a statue in the pocket. He has some mobility, and I think he's a lot like Ethan Kaliakmanis in that sense that he can create opportunities with his leg, but he's not going to be a Gavin Wimsatt type runner. But he has some ability to create and extend plays, which is important.
Right. Yeah. He did that in the game, throwing to a lot of, again, we've anointed wide receivers based on spring games who never materialize. But I think in this case, we are really looking at guys who are not part of the plan for this year, so we can judge them as such. You saw some wide receiver depth in this program, which has not been the case. Young Vernon Allen III, 98 yards receiving. I don't know. I feel if you were feeling comfortable about the system that Rutgers is running, and that's the important part too. Talking to Ethan about that, this is his third year in it. He didn't play a lot in the spring game, but there's a comfort level that he's got. I think the offense in general is in a good place. That's my takeaway from spring. I get it. They're not playing Penn State's defense. They're not playing Ohio State's defense. I understand all that, but overall, right now, looks pretty good.
With the wide receivers, the thing that's interesting to me is that the last 2 years they've had a true freshman play not significant, but a decent amount of snaps. A couple of years ago was Ian Strong. Last year was KJ Duff. It feels like they probably have someone in that group who can do it. Vernon Allen certainly looked the part yesterday or Saturday. Jordan Houston had a couple of nice catches, and I think they like where he is at. So I wouldn't be surprised if any of those guys play, a decent amount of snaps. I think the ideal would be they don't play, right? And you have a lot of top-end talent between DT Sheffield, who I don't think played. They held out a lot of veteran guys. Ian Strong didn't play. Obviously, he was been held out in the spring with after getting surgery. I don't think KJ Duff played. But
he was out there, wasn't he? I think Duff, maybe. Ben Black was definitely out there.
KJ Duff was on punt return, which was or kick return.
That's right. Right.
Special teams.
Mm-hmm. Right. One, as you anointed him, the Christian Dremel fair catch,
the fair catch coordinator.
Should make that an award, a postseason award.
Yes, but to the point, like if those guys are able to chew up a significant amount of the snaps, that means they're playing at a high level, and you can kind of have these freshman guys developing in the wings. The spring game, again, it's worth what it's worth, but right. You could feel good about maybe not how these guys can contribute this year, but in a year, maybe 2 years. And you feel good about where the offense is. The only real question is the offensive line, and you're never going to get any significant answers from the spring game.
Right.
I don't want to anoint this as this isn't a new topic, but I don't want to overstate the importance of what becomes of this offense after it was such a run heavy offense. And obviously you have multiple guys that can replace Kyle Monangai, but is it going to still be the ground and pound type offense, or will we see a lot more of this offense run through Ethan Kaliakmanis? And you think with his leadership and what he was able to do last year, that's the way it goes. Obviously you didn't see that in the spring game because he played one series, but I'm really intrigued to see if the offense is different, how it evolves, and how much of a pass first offense this becomes with your most experienced leader on the team being your quarterback, probably the guy that it runs through. So that's probably the biggest thing for me.
Right. And they haven't had this situation in a long time where you've got a quarterback that they are extremely comfortable with. I mean, the best way to put it, he looks like, I don't know if he was in the weight room a little bit. He looks like a dude now. Talking to him, he seems confident, comfortable as the leader of the team. I don't know if he certainly didn't say he's got something to prove, but he recognizes this is his last year of college football. This is his last go around. Again, we can't overstate the third year in a system. And he mentioned that, right? He bounced around a lot, like a lot of quarterbacks do, with different systems, different, coaches. And now he's comfortable with Kirk Shiraka. I would be surprised if he is not early on really dialed in. And I think that, you're looking at the team for the first time in forever. It's going to be dictated by how the offense does. Like, this is the side of the field that is the stronger unit.
Yeah. This is probably the best quarterback situation since Gary Nova, right? You had Chris Laviano a couple of years, but he was never really the guy for certain. There was no doubt Ethan was the guy now. It's interesting to see, to Pat's point, like CJ Campbell is a more dynamic offensive player than Kyle Monangai, at least as far as catching the ball. They have a tight end, Colin Weber, who can maybe finally be the guy who can kind of catch the ball out of the backfield, as well as Kenny Fletcher, obviously, who missed a lot of the season with injury. And now you don't have a Kyle Monangai who could be that workhorse. Whether Antoine Raymond could be that guy, whether Kirk Shiraka wants him to be that guy, I agree that I think the floor for the offense is pretty solidly set, and then they have a lot of options to work with. Yeah. And then defensively, they could be good, right? I think we kind of established that at Greg Schiano defense, the floor for that is at a decent level, but a lot of new pieces, maybe some new structure with Rob Smith coming in. I think this is the opposite of last year, right? Where we said the defense set the floor and the offense set the ceiling. I think now the offense sets the floor, and how good the defense is will determine how good Rutgers can be.
Pat, what did you see from the defense when you were watching that? When you were watching that unit, because it's funny, I wasn't. I was looking at the roster a lot.
Yeah,
that's a sign that I did. Like constantly, who's that? Like who's 91?
I was kind of in the same boat. Yeah, right. I was kind of in the same boat. But what I did see, a player that has really just been flown under the radar for years, but I've always appreciated him, and especially I've covered him in high school. Al-Shadi Salam, I thought had a really good start to this game. He had a couple pass breakups. And he'll play an important role in the secondary. He obviously started his career as a running back. He's super fast. He's one of the fastest guys on the team, and he's going to have big shoes to fill in the secondary. I thought he played really well early on, and some of the defensive backs played well. But what I saw from the defense was the same as last year. Granted, you can't hit the quarterback, but there was no pressure. There were no turnovers. It just seemed more vanilla. Right. It didn't seem dominant, right, for what it was worth.
Right. Obviously, the big news coming out on the defense just right before the game, Mo Toure entering the transfer portal. He wasn't going to play in the spring game, obviously. Anyway, it's funny. Like it's a move that wasn't surprising based on he had put something on social media earlier took it down. I looked like they had talked him into staying. He's not staying. And I go back and forth as to how devastating this loss was with his injury. I don't know if you could count on him to be the player that they need him to be. At the same time, he's a dude. He's the one pass rusher when he is healthy that they knew they could count on. I don't know that there's a player on the roster that can replace him. I mean, what did you think when you heard that news, and what has to happen now?
To your point, it wasn't surprising after he tweeted out Sunday night that he was out. It did look like they maybe were able to convince him to stay. So I think the thing is this: coming off the first ACL tear, the next year he led them in sacks again, right? And he was this pass rusher, and he was playing more edge rusher than he was linebacker, as he was before the injury. Can he do the same thing coming off of a second ACL tear on the same knee? That is an open question. I think Rutgers certainly was hoping he would be back to be able to test that theory, and it hurts them in the linebacker depth department, because now you're relying on a guy, Moses Walker, who played inconsistently last year. He's probably going to be your starter unless you add a linebacker in the portal. I think they're certainly actively looking for one. It's about to be May, so I'm not sure how good the pickings are at this point, but I think you have a guy in DJ Jabomi who you feel really good about. You feel like he can take a big step after playing a lot last year. But after that, you got Moses Walker, who I said again, a guy who's inconsistent last year. Can he put it all together? And then you have a lot of young guys playing behind him. Sam Robinson, DJ McClary are potential filled young guys, but they haven't done anything, and they don't, as far as they don't have experience playing, I should say. That's how I should put it. Yeah. So, I mean, you're back in a situation again with linebacker where you don't really know. And Mo really would have helped that. No, even if he took a step back with the injury, I think 75% Mo Toure is probably better than any guy you can get in the portal at this point. So I think it's a blow. But listen, this is Mo Toure's 7th year in college. I can understand wanting to maybe try something else out. The NFL maybe isn't going to come calling for a guy who's going to be 24, 25 years old next year off of 2 ACL tears. And this is probably his last chance at making a good amount of money that could change the life for him and his family. Again, he has a young kid. I think he's 3 or 4 years old at this point, but this is a family man. This is an opportunity to make some money. I'm not sure how much money Rutgers was going to be able to, or willing to at least put into him, because I'm certain money has to be a factor here, right? It always is a factor. So I don't think it's an insurmountable decision for Rutgers, but I do think it is a hit to what they were planning for in the fall.
See, I thought the money thing was the reason, but in talking to people around Piscataway, it seemed like it was more like a change of scenery thing as well. Like there's personal stuff going on there too. I mean, I guess you look at it.
We don't know the
full story.
Yeah. Right. I don't think obviously we never will, but I think this is a crushing blow for Rutgers, because we documented how well this defense played when Tyreen Powell was on the field last year versus when he wasn't. That's the situation you're getting with Mo Toure. And anytime Greg Schiano talked about Mo Toure being out last year, he always started, this is our alpha guy on the defense. This was the guy that was just a leader, first and foremost, but a guy that was just so physically demanding and dominant and can hit you hard that game-changing player is gone now. And I think regardless of what he came back, the injury, of course, but I think when you lose that soul of the defense, it creates a void that's almost impossible to fill. And I think that's what we saw last year with Tyreen Powell. And I think that's what we're going to see without Mo Toure, who is beloved, right? Like he was just like a guy in the locker room that was always having a good time. And it's just a really insurmountable loss to me. I think it's a big loss.
Yeah. To your point on the alpha, I wonder who is going to be that guy, because they lost pretty much every veteran guy on the defense last year. So that's an interesting question. You bring up Tyreen Powell. Obviously, he struggled last year coming off of injury. I think maybe there were some concerns that Mo Toure would have a similar situation, right? You're coming off an ACL, maybe you struggle as well. And I think this puts a lot more pressure on your 2 transfer portal additions of the edge, Bradley Weaver and Eric O'Neill, to live up to the production they had at the lower level at Rutgers, because you don't have a third guy in Mo Toure who's a proven pass rusher. So I think it'll be interesting to see. Bradley Weaver didn't dress for the spring game yesterday. Eric O'Neill played, I think, 1 series, so we didn't get a great glimpse of them, but there was already some pressure on them to perform. I think there's even more now with Mo Toure gone.
Right. Yeah. And you can see he went in, they've gone to the portal right away, which means to me they're spending the money. which is an interesting, like, this is where we are in college football. Now they've got the money to spend. I don't know what Motoro is making. Clearly had to be one of the higher paid players at Rutgers based on his experience. Is important to the program. Went out and got Chris Joins, Mercer safety. Mushad Giwa, a name. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And of course I'm not. I'm not pronouncing names correctly. You listen to this podcast. Oliver Bellotti, defensive lineman at Kent State. I think there's a need. They recognize at Piscataway that the depth drop off last year was devastating. That they're not going to let that happen again. When you lose Tyreen Powell and all of a sudden, UCLA's putting 50 points on you or whatever. I'm talking about. They can't do that again. They have to be ready to have guys behind with the injuries happen. That said, you're right, Pat. I don't know where the pass rush is going to come from. They didn't have one last year. We have to see what those new defensive linemen do. And hey, Rob Smith, he's gonna have to be really creative. They brought him back for a reason. He knows that defense. It's going to be really interesting to see how they figure that out.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because 2 years ago, right, they had that great defense and the offense wasn't there. Last year, they had the offense and the defense wasn't there at times. So it's what will become this third year is critical, I think, and kind of can Rutgers finally put it together, right? You've seen glimpses of good offense and bad defense, and right, like I said, so can it all come together? There's so many shoes to fill on defense. That I would be concerned. If I was a fan.
On the portal thing, just those three guys certainly add depth, right? And that's what to your point, exactly, Play. I think that's the lesson they learned from last year is that you got to have guys that can be part of a rotation that haven't, inevitably injuries are going to happen. The drop off can't be drastic. I think they're still pursuing a linebacker. I think ideally one that's closer to a starting level to replace Motore. And then in an ideal world, you get an offensive tackle that could push or even surpass Tyler Needham at left tackle or take the right tackle spot. There's a lot of flux in those positions. Obviously, offensive tackle is akin to center for basketball in that the scarcity and the importance and the value they have in the market. So I think in an ideal world, they get another tackle. I don't think Giwa is at a point where he can contribute this year, but the potential he showed at LIU, the physical tools he has and working with Pat Flaherty, I think he's a guy that they think could be, down the line, a developmental project, maybe not exactly the same as Holland Pierce, but a guy that you could turn from a low-level recruit into a consistent Big Ten starter. But I think those two pieces are really important for them to get in the portal. Last year, they got Shedrick Rhodes late in the portal. He obviously didn't play and is now back in the portal. Got to do a little bit better than that if you're going to get a tackle. We'll see if they do.
Right. The other football news, NFL draft, as someone tweeted, there's a run on Rutgers during the late rounds. Robert Longerbeam to the Ravens, Kyle Monungai to the Bears, Keontae Hamilton to Houston, right? Houston, correct. So 3 players they could draft. I don't know. They weren't the 3 I would have expected. Thought Holland Pierce was going to go. I think you agree with me on that one, Brian, based on your pre-writing. But still, a decent showing. A lot of guys getting the free agent contracts as well. What would some takeaways from draft weekend for Rutgers?
Well, just to your point, yes, I expected Holland Pierce to be, if not the first, the second guy off the board, just off of his size, right? There's a lot of concerns about his mobility and his bend, which amazingly he talk about that in interviews with us, and we'd be like, is bend really that important? And every scouting report you read is like, bend this, bend that. Okay.
The Jets, the first pick for the Jets was all about the bend. He's got the best bend in the draft. I'm like, what is this? What the hell? Can he block? I'm becoming one of those cranky old people. What is this?
I think bending is a prerequisite for blocking. I think you have to be able to bend to block.
Right.
So maybe Pat Flaherty knows what he's talking about when he's telling Holland he has to work on his bend. Anyway, I think it actually worked out the best for him to end up at the Eagles, who have the best offensive line coach in the NFL. And he's made some decent money, guaranteed. And he's going to be a guy that, when the Eagles are in the NFC Championship game, he's starting for them at right tackle. Everyone in the NFL is like, how the hell did they get this guy? Howie Roseman does it again. But yeah, and Keontae, I think, was a guy that was always a sleeper. Could have been he's the highest potential guy outside of Holland, I think. So I'm not surprised to see him get drafted. I thought 3 to 4 was the number. Most they've had since 2013 when they had a record 7. They were never going to pass that record, but I'd say it's pretty solid.
I wonder, Pat, these guys, And this is just popped in my head, but there's so much talk in this draft about how guys doing interviews with, Shedeur Sanders dropping down. I do wonder if the GM sat down across from Keontae Hamilton, sat down across from Kyle Monangai, who dudes we've dealt with. And so we know this side of them. Right.
Yeah.
We know how they handle questions, how they carry themselves. Like, there is no doubt on my mind that those two players, Longer Beam too, those three guys impressed.
Amazing spokespeople for
right.
the program.
They impressed.
I totally agree. That's a fascinating point. The only thing, one of my biggest takeaways from the draft was seeing the running backs that went ahead of Kyle Monangai.
Yeah.
I thought
the Giants too, right? In the 4th round.
People love Scattaboo, though, and if you watch the college football playoff, you were like, wow, that was a monster game he had against Texas anyway. One of the guys was 4th round pick, Bashal Tutton out of Virginia Tech, who played against Rutgers twice. And if you were just to watch that game and say who was the better running back, it would be a no-brainer that it was Kyle Monangai. And he went in the 4th, Kyle went in the 7th. And listen, I get it. Kyle is undersized, maybe not the fastest, but I always come back to production over everything. And what else can you say about Kyle's production? So one of my biggest takeaways was that I thought Kyle slipped a little bit, just based on who went ahead of him. And that's maybe his story. That's always been Kyle Monangai's story. So Absolutely. It'll just be another chip on his sholdder. But
I thought he landed in the perfect spot. Like, if I have to Google, who's the Bears running back? I had no idea. So I wouldn't be surprised. I'm not telling you to draft him in your fantasy draft, but he'll be on that roster.
It'll be like Isaiah Pacheco, right? I don't think anybody expected him to be the starting running back at the Chiefs. Obviously, Caleb Williams is no Patrick Mahomes, and Ben Johnson is no Andy Reid, but I think he'll have a chance of playing a lot. I think the only thing that hurt Kyle is what gets a lot of these NFL prospects is he's short and he doesn't have that breakaway speed for a running back. And I think that it's hard for these NFL scouts and GMs to overlook that for the production. I think Kyle will have a chance to, just like he proved all the recruiting analysts wrong, to Pat's point, could certainly prove all these NFL scouts wrong. And are the schedules out? Is he going to play in New York this season?
Schedule is not out yet, no. Well, wait, that part will be out.
The teams are out.
The teams are out. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know that intimately at that point. I don't think
done some research for the podcast.
So if someone knows that, put it in the Discord. All right, transition to hoops really quick. We'll come back to some football in the questions from our listeners. Hoops Portal. We wanted them to get a rim protector player. They did. By fall, Kansas State center, guy they recruited pretty hard out of high school. I don't know what to say about it. I'm kind of at a loss because I'm in this weird spot where I've resolved that I'm not going to do with basketball with what I did last year, which is ignore what my eyes are seeing and what my brain is telling me. Like right now, my eyes are seeing a roster that, if everything goes right, would finish 15th in the Big Ten if everything went right. So when you take a guy off a Kansas State team, I get it, 6'11". Kansas State played 14 players last year. He played in the 14th most games. He played in 4 games. Couldn't get off the bench. Couldn't get off the bench in Arkansas. Like, what's going to change? What's going to change in the Big Ten? Like, I just don't okay. I get it. Like, potential, great, McDonald's All-American, but this is not like he's got a college basketball tape now.
Barely.
All right. You seem more optimistic about this than I do, Brian, which is, again, unusual.
So, again, it's all about how you look at it, right? I entered this weekend thinking Rutgers is going to be the 18th place team in the Big Ten, and they're going to have the worst center situation in the Big Ten, right? Yeah. Worst case scenario, and probably more likely scenario, is that by fall's edition changes none of that, right? They'll still have the worst center situation. They'll still finish worse in the Big Ten. The optimistic way to view this is that Rutgers is the team, and Jay Young is the coach that finally unlocks this potential in by fall. And he'll be playing a lot more in Piscataway, right? Just out of necessity, right? Unless they add another center, which I think would be shocking. And maybe that having that consistent runtime, maybe working with Jay Young will, he's never going to become an all Big Ten guy, but he could become this rim protecting guy who rebounds and puts back on the offensive end, right? A poor man's Cliff Omori in his freshman or sophomore season, right? I'm not saying the dominant Cliff. I'm saying the early parts of Cliff. I think we have to. I
The
think
guy
we
who
have to
fouls
be.
every 2 seconds.
That is it. That is a major issue he has. He fouls at an unbelievable rate. Now, again, we have to look at what they wanted. They wanted a rim protector first and foremost. That's what they needed last year. And if there's one thing I feel confident that he could potentially be good at down the road is blocking shots. Everything else, I'm not entirely too optimistic. Look, this is about as good as they can get, right? Like if we have realistic expectations of what this roster could look like, this was about as good as they can get. I am with you, Steve. I still think this team is going to be at the bottom of the Big Ten. And there, but what I keep coming back to is like, there's nobody that we're going to get realistically that was going to change my view. So we might as well enjoy the ride and see if they can turn this guy into, just to wrap this point up on the development. Here's why I'm not too crazy about the development angle. He's going to turn 22 in December, and he's going to be in his third year in college basketball. And people are still like, they got by fall former McDonald's All-American.
Well,
just ignore the fact he played
right.
70 minutes the last 2 years. And the other thing is, there will be the excuse of like, he had two better players in front of him at Kansas State. That's why he barely played. He's a former 4-star player, top 30 player in his second year in college. Even if they had two better centers, you'd think he'd play more than 4 games. And he was healthy. He was never hurt. It wasn't like an injury thing. He never played.
4 games.
Think about it like this. If the 13th player on Rutgers roster transferred, how would Rutgers fans feel about how that would impact the season?
Right. Well, that player,
his name.
Yeah. Right.
That's baseball.
Right. Yeah. Right. And I don't know. Just is he better than Manning Bolade? I don't think so. Is he better than Bryce Dortch? I don't think so. You think he is? I don't know. I think Bryce.
Did you watch Manning Bolade last year?
I was there. I understand that, but you can't watch Bryce Dortch. You can't watch by fault because he didn't play. Didn't play.
It's a great point.
I will say this. Trying to find anything that gives you like the slightest ray of sunshine here. They do have options, one, and they should be better up front rebounding wise. I mean, if you look overall, I think maybe if that's something, if this is going to be a team finally built again in Steve Peichel's image, they're going to have to do that better. They're going to be better on the glass. But I mean, Ace Bailey was your best rebounder. He's gone. Dylan Harper, what, your third best rebounder? He's gone. I don't know. It's tough.
They're going to have a lot of chances to rebound the ball on account of how many shots they're going to miss offensively, and ideally how many shots they force the opponent to miss. Rebounding is a nice stat. It's important. I think more important is being able to put the ball in the basket and prevent other teams from scoring. Right. But Byfall is not going to put the ball in the basket any other way aside from putbacks. But you got to hope he can rebound the ball, protect the rim. And again, they're going to go back to trying to win games 40-42, right? Yeah. This is a step in the right direction. The thing is, we can't be surprised. That's my big thing here. We can't be surprised that this is what they're doing. This is what Steve Peichel told us he was going to do. And this was really the only direction they could go. If it's going to be successful or not.
I'm a little surprised. I just thought they would get a player that had some kind of resume at the highest level. I just thought that would be possible. Instead, you've got the third best center on a 15-17 Kansas State team and the leading scorer on a 7-25 NJIT team, which we haven't talked about, in Tariq Francis, like a 5'11", high volume guard who played for a really bad team on a really low level. Like that's like, he's not a Big Ten guard. Like he's not. I don't think so. Okay. So like, what's next? Are they going to get someone who shoots better than 30% from 3-point range? Like, are they going to find that player in the portal? Is there another move where you can at least go, oh, all right, well, I can see that now. They still got 4 scholarships left. They have any money left?
I think it just goes back to the point that you were trying to make. It's like, can Rutgers find its roots again under Peichel and build a roster that fits his system and fits what he's trying to do? And it just seems like a backwards logic.
But that team had good players. Caleb McConnell, Ron Harper Jr., Geo Baker.
But they weren't great from like on paper, right? You didn't. When Rutgers signed Ron Harper Jr., you weren't like, oh my God, this guy's going to change the program or right? They were under recruited guys
Right.
that overperformed. That's the only hope here, is that these guys come in and overperform.
Yeah.
Thing is,
The
those
opposite
guys
of
had,
last year. It's the opposite of last year.
right. Those guys had 3 years to develop to become overperformers.
Sure.
No matter how hard they coach Tariq Francis, he's not going to develop significantly in 6 months or whatever. The Tariq Francis thing is like hard to justify. I really think so. I think the only way to justify it is if he's your off the bench guy, popcorn microwave scorer, right? Like, I don't think he can be your starting guard in any scenario. And it's hard because there's going to be questions. He obviously is very close to Brandon Knight, right? And there's going to be questions of, if he wasn't close to Brandon Knight, would he be on this roster, right? Would he go from a chucker at NJIT to a rotational piece at a Big Ten school? I think the answer,
Of course not.
is no, right? So that adds to it, to the situation. Here's okay. The way I would set expectations for this season is I expect Rutgers to finish 18th in the Big Ten, right? And I think the goal should be making the tournament, the Big Ten tournament. I mean, if they can make the Big Ten tournament as the 14th team, 15th team, I think that is an achievement for what we've seen so far. To your point, if they're saving money or budgeting for hoping to get a star guard, a guy who can, handle the ball, or a guy who can shoot, or a guy that's much better than everyone else on this roster, maybe you can talk your way into a higher floor. But it's about to be May. Most of the good players in the portal have found a spot to go. And I think clearly Steve Pikiell's strategy is, with the limited budget they have, to spread it around and get 4 or 5 guys, as opposed to spending most of the budget on one guy and building around that one guy. We can argue the merits of that, but that clearly seems to be the way it's going. But I'm with you in that I don't see any path towards success for the season. I don't think on paper the additions are going to make this team any good. If you want to be optimistic, you really have to stretch your mind and imagine the best case scenario for literally every player on this roster for this team to be a 500 team.
All right. Questions. Let's go. Let's do some Discord, Twitter, X, whatever it's called, questions. We've got a comment. This was good. We got a review of the podcast on X. I will quote it here for you because I think it's really accurate. This podcast is embarrassingly void of any insights. It's like a high school version of First Take. Well, I like it. It's good. He compared us to First Take. That's a successful television show. That's what I would put. If we were doing a review, it'd be, it's like ... First Take.
Which one of us is Stephen A. Smith?
Stephen A. Smith makes $6 million, $10 million a year, right?
Which one of us is him?
Which one of us is him?
Are you Stephen A. Smith, Steve?
Yeah,
he has the same name.
Got to run for president, Stephen A. Smith.
That's great.
Speaking of president, first question: any updates on the presidential search? Yes, we do have updates. I was involved, spent part of my week last week reporting the rumors that Phil Murphy was at one point or at some moment approached by Rutgers to be president. He will not be president of Rutgers. It seems like they were one of those stories where there was so much buzz we could not help but report on it, but the people closer to it poo-pooed it, and then when we published the story, the people really close to it shat all over it. So I think it's pretty clear that Murphy was approached. He does not want the job, but it looks like they do have 4 candidates. They've narrowed it down to the point where you would think, this is already behind their own timeline here, that at some point in early May, they will have a president in place. And if that's the case, then, sometime in June, July, August, they will have an athletic director.
It's a shame with Phil Murphy because he's in Saudi Arabia this week. And as you know, they have a lot of money to work with. So if he was going to become the president, talk about an NIL budget builder. I mean, go to the Crown Prince and say, hey, give me $10 million. I'll get a center.
Right.
We can have.
If it worked for golf, why not sell a share? I mean, Live Golf, sell a share to get let the Saudis have Rutgers basketball. I'm all for it. They've tried everything else. Why not? Be great.
I mean, it wouldn't be the first time university sold its soul to a less than reputable entity. So why not? If it wins basketball and football games,
all good.
Give it a shot.
That's great.
That's great. All right. Another question about the GM. Jerry Carino mentioned on his podcast that the men's basketball GM position hasn't been posted yet because Jonathan Holloway hasn't signed off on it. Is there a way the Board of Governors can sign off instead? I'm hearing different stuff on that. I mean, Jerry obviously is really dialed in. He was harsh. I listened to it. He was really harsh on Holloway, who is obviously an easy punching bag as he leaves. My sense is that this was an HR thing because of the salary, and in typical Rutgers fashion, trying to decide exactly how much they should pay the GM and what the job description should say, because it's a little bit unusual for university stuff. I come back to this, and I could be wrong on this. I just don't understand. Like, if Steve Peichel was standing on a chair, his basketball screaming, "I need this now," I think they'd have it now. I just don't understand that. Does he not have the pull to get that done? If Greg Schiano did it, I mean, it would have happened yesterday. If he needed this, the number of positions they've hired, it's strange.
I don't know this HR thing, but that just seems like the most ridiculous excuse possible. Right. Come on.
It's not going to matter for this year.
We can't change the language on some job posting because it's part of federal and state law to write a certain pay grade, right? Come on, that's a joke.
But Brian, I think there is legitimate debate inside the athletic department about what the job should be too. Right? I don't know that Steve Peichel wants what a lot of other people think he should have in that job.
Yes, I think that's part of the issue, right? Just nailing down exactly what this person is going to do when they get the job. And obviously, when you post a job, you have to write down the description for the job. I think that's part of the issue. Blaming bureaucratic issues at Rutgers is a tale as old as time, right? Obviously, it's always, it's true to some extent, right? Rutgers is allegedly a unique place with a lot of bureaucratic difficulties, and that's why the athletics department has had some struggles over the years. I think certainly that's part of it. I think there's a bigger part of it, to your point, of what is this job going to be? How involved are they going to be in the basketball operations? What is the profile of the person we want to pursue? Are we going to try to get a NBA guy or a basketball oriented guy? Is it more of a lawyer who focuses more on contracts and salary cap? And I think that's part of the thing. The thing is, it's May. That should have been ironed out by now. I mean, conversations have been going on since during the season, right? We're at a point where, listen, here's the thing about job postings. Rutgers women's basketball lost an assistant coach last week. The job is already posted. Okay. I know there's an established posting for a women's basketball assistant coach. They've changed them dozens of times over the years. But if you can post your women's basketball assistant thing within a week, and we're 6 months into the general manager thing, right, even if the general manager wouldn't be doing his job, if you hired him today, right, his job wouldn't matter for another few months. Right. The principle of the thing is how is this taking so long? And to your point on Greg Schiano, right? It's one thing if Peichel doesn't have the same amount of pull, which I'm not sure that's true. Certainly I think Greg Schiano has more power, but I don't know if the gap is so large that Peichel can march into someone's office and say, what the hell is going on? I think it's, how much of the desire is there? How much of a priority is this GM thing? That to me is the bigger question. I think clearly...
If it was a priority, it would be done. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And I think this comes back to like everyone outside the program was, I have written headlines that say, Steve Peichel must make changes. The person who does not think that Steve Peichel must make changes is Steve Peichel. Right? Clearly, he didn't change his staff, has not really changed his approach to the portal in any noticeable way. I don't know. Maybe there's stuff happening that we're not seeing, but for the most part, it's the same, So I think that's part of it too. He didn't. If you saw this as a priority, man, I just would be very surprised that he couldn't get it done already. So
same. Yep. Well, as far as changes, I think again the portal approach, the money is always going to be a factor here. I think that's what they would tell you, that any changes they might do in their portal approach are impacted significantly by having, if not the lowest budget in the Big Ten, one of the lowest budgets in the Big Ten. That being said, I don't think that explains everything, right? I don't think you could just point to money and say, we're helpless. I think there is that it clearly is a factor. But to your point, you say they need to make changes. What they do is revert back to what they did well: defense, rebounding, developmental guys. I'm not sure that's the right approach, but I guess we'll see in the winter.
That's where they're going. All right, some more questions. AJ Cerise looks great. Do you expect him to have a package this year to get him on the field? I don't know. He's not it's not like a Gavin Wimsatt. Let's put it like, I don't know that he's a guy that would have that kind of thing. My instinct says no. What do you guys think?
No.
I think Mike Teal had this interesting, it wasn't a package, but he told me his freshman year that Greg Schiano specifically said, like, we're going to put you in the final 2 minutes of the third quarter for a series, or there was like a very designed, you're going to play in this situation, be ready for it. And he did. So maybe there's something like that in the non-conference games for Surace. I think that'd be very valuable.
Right. But to your point, Play, I think he's very similar to Ethan Kaliakmanis, and there's really no reason to, the only reason you'd make a package is to differentiate, do something different. I don't think it would make sense. The more interesting question to me is, are they going to try to get a quarterback to add depth now that a Johnny Shepard left? I don't think they will. It's a really thin needle to thread. But
you know who loves that question when you ask him? Greg Schiano. It's the new any injuries coach question. Like, how about you're going to add a player at this position? His face just this, like, it just turns, like, looks at you like, I'm not going to answer that. We're trying to look to upgrade every position, Brian, as I've said 512 times before.
You got to ask the question.
Of course.
You never know the answer. Maybe the 500th time is the time he cracks and he says, you know what? Yes, we're going to add a quarterback. Are you happy? It wasn't, but maybe the 501st will be.
Is he could add an edge rusher? That's the next question. Kevin Fine on the Discord wants to know, does 2 years transfer mean there's a pot of money to hire an edge rusher at linebacker? There's a pot of money. That's clear. We've talked about it after tackle. Edge rusher is the hardest position to get. I don't know. We haven't seen that yet. Certainly they're adding players right now, which leads me to believe that they had an edge rusher and waiting in the wings. They would have added them. Guys shake out now, I guess, a little bit after this. I don't know. What do you think? Are they going to find somebody?
I think they'd look for a linebacker to fill in for Toure over an edge rusher. I mean, they got 2 really good, really productive edge rushers already out of the portal. So I think maybe a linebacker with edge rushing capability, but I think first and foremost, a linebacker.
Right. You got to remember, I think people get mixed up with this. Like, Mo Toure transitioned to a full-time linebacker in the season before his injury, right? He was playing in that 4-2, in that very much like he played a little bit of a hybrid edge, but he wasn't necessarily a go get the quarterback he was a full-time linebacker. So I think Rutgers addressed its pass rushing issues with Eric O'Neill and others. So if you're looking for a guy that's going to sack the quarterback 10 times, it's probably unlikely.
All right. Of the 3 Rutgers players who got drafted, who ended up in the best position, and why is it Kyle Munungai? I love that question. That's funny. I'm going to go against the grain. I'm going to go longer bean just because, playing cornerback in the Ravens defensive system is a pretty good spot to be. But yeah, I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Kyle's got an opportunity. So you can't argue with that. I think I have not seen a guy who landed someplace for Rutgers who I'm like, ooh, it doesn't seem like a good idea. I mean, it seemed like they did pretty well, even the free agents.
Yeah, I think Kyle's in the best spot as far as playing. I don't know if he's in the best spot as far as winning. The Bears haven't won much of anything for the past 40 years, but I think he's in a great spot if he's going to get on the field.
Right.
I just love the Bears from the historic, nostalgic Walter Payton, right? Like there's some Aurora. I know, like, that's like almost like fantasy land, but I feel like Kyle Munungai has that like character and would appreciate, George Halas and things like that. And
totally.
Right. Like I totally see that.
There'll be an off-season column when we get Kyle on the phone to talk about sweetness and the whole the Bears. Yeah, there's no question.
Greg coached there too a few years ago, many years ago. He has some recommendations from his old days there.
All right, a few more along those lines. Thoughts on how the RB depth chart will end up at the start of the season? Well, we didn't see the two of the 5 guys. I mean, CJ Campbell did not play. We mentioned that neither did Sam Brown. I don't know that we need to have an answer to this question. Like, I really don't. Like, I think maybe this is the year that Rutgers finally just doesn't have a featured back. I mean, why there's no need to have a guy carry the ball 30 times a game like Kyle did. If you have a lot of options, then they do. They have a lot of different kinds of player. I mean, I think Antoine Raymond would be my choice if I had to pick one. He'd be the guy. But Jayshon Benjamin, I mean, they've got a lot of dudes. How about Ed? What's it? Ed Guerrero? Ed with two D's. Ed, as Bobby Darin calls him. I love that.
But yeah, it's really fascinating, and it's just a big question mark about Sam Brown, CJ Campbell. If he's a workhorse type guy, we'll see. And Antoine Raymond, right? He had 10 touchdowns last year. I mean, a lot of them were in the fourth quarter of garbage time, but he was really kind of a revelation, a guy that we didn't expect much of. To really have that great freshman year was impressive.
He ended it off really well. He had, I think, 3 touchdowns in the Rage Bowl, 2 touchdowns against Michigan State.
Right.
I would just divide the running back room in 2 categories. You have the guys who can catch the ball out of the backfield in CJ Campbell and Jayshon Benjamin. We've seen CJ Campbell do it at the college level. They feel really good about what they've seen from Jayshon, in practice. And then you have the workhorse guys, the Kyle Monungai guys, and Antoine Raymond and Sam Brown. I think we should not expect anything from Sam Brown, right? I think anything you get out of Sam Brown coming off that season-ending injury would be a bonus. So then it depends on the situation and how Kirk Ciarrocca wants to utilize them. I certainly think he has more options now than he did last year, where Kyle was clearly the best guy in the room. Now I think you have a little bit of balance and you could kind of split the reps. That's how I would see it.
All right. And here, finally, my favorite question of the spring. Best name on the football team, Ice Cup or Big Cat? And Brian, you added one in there, or Stretch. So we got 3 choices here. I'll let you guys go first because I have a clear favorite, obviously, in this debate.
Yeah, it's definitely Ice Cup. I mean, that's amazing.
Ice Cup de Graffenried. Is that how you pronounce his last name?
Sounds good to me.
You should add that in. It's not just Ice Cup. I mean, it's the last name too. It's part of the name. I mean, that's right. And the story with Ice Cup, if you're not familiar, he's an Atlantic City kid. You think like, wow, how'd you get the name Ice Cup? I was hoping for something like really, he was born into a cup of ice, or something like, like something, but it's just turned out he used to bring an ice cup to practice. So that's how he got the nickname. Big Cat Simon, do we know how that nickname happened? If we delve?
I don't, but I appreciate the 2 T's. I'm not quite sure why there's 2 T's and not 1 T. I appreciate that.
There are 2 T's in Big Cat? I didn't know that.
Yeah, 2 words, 2 T's.
2 words, 2 T's.
I appreciate Rutgers putting that on the official roster. I like Stretch Doralis, and I'm not sure if people call him this. I think it would be an appropriate one. Sam Robinson, right? He's a kid from Florida, hard-hitting linebacker. Mm-hmm. I think they should start calling him Bam Bam Sam Robinson because he's going to be bam bamming guys down the middle of the field. If no one's used that one before, free marketing for Rutgers. Take it, please. Make all the T-shirts you want. All I ask is for a 10% return on all T-shirts sold.
I'm older, so I would call him Smokey.
Ooh,
Smokey
I like it.
Robinson, of course.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for the questions. Much appreciated. The what else segment, this is great. The fact that we went, 48 minutes in this podcast. Umi Salim Beasley fired. That would have been a huge story. It is a huge story. I guess at this point, it was no surprise that she was not going to come back as gymnastics coach. I think it took this long because they were trying to reach a settlement, and based on all of our reporting, did not. And I think we know what that means, that the lawsuit will come in this. This is not the last time we'll hear her name. It's the gift that keeps on giving from Pat Hobbs. To the point, they did name her interim coach as the full coach. What do we know about the new gymnastics coach as well?
Anastasia Kando was assistant under Umi for the past decade. So they didn't really stray far from the Umi Salim Beasley tree, but she's an alum of Rutgers. She was a letter winner at Rutgers. She was part of the team that had made the NCAA regionals the last time before this past year. And she took the team that Salim Beasley and herself built and brought them to NCAA regionals. And I think it's just kind of the safe, smart hire, right? I don't know if they wanted to go into a national search. I don't know how much the gymnastics job is attractive to other coaches, given the scandal that's happened, although they do have really good facilities, obviously. I think it was the safe hire, and I think it's fine. It's a fine hire. I think the more interesting thing, to your point, is like, what is going to be the next step of this Umi Salim Beasley saga? I have not heard back from her lawyer, who I tried to reach out to last week, and I think we're kind of just waiting to hear next steps.
All right. What else? Others. Homecoming game announced during the spring game to the crowd. Oregon, your traditional homecoming opponent. You want to schedule someone that you can beat. I get it. I understand that there's no other choice in October. That was explained to me. Still, it's like, ooh, okay, that's strong. I thought they could have done Purdue, and then someone says, "Well, the game's at Purdue." I'm like, "Well, let's all go to Purdue, West Lafayette road trip, homecoming. A lot of Rutgers fans here. Why? Let's homecoming. Wait, we're in West Lafayette. It's okay." Oregon.
Well, look, they've probably been listening to the Rutgers Rant podcast and heard me predict that they're going to knock off one of these 3 Big Ten teams, and they figure we might as well be homecoming while they do it. So
right.
I think they picked Oregon as the upset bid. The season calendar is just weird this year. Iowa might have made sense. I believe there's a strong chance that's a Friday night game. I know Rivals reported that it will be the Friday night game. My understanding is it's not completely finalized, but it's heading in that direction. So you can't do Iowa. There's one game in October. You can't do any of the first 3 games against, Miami of Ohio, Ohio, and Norfolk State. And then you play Maryland and Penn State in November. You can't do homecoming on the last game of the season. This is the only game that, made sense. And it's not like Rutgers has had guaranteed wins in homecoming. I did the math. I think they're 4-6 in homecoming games since joining the Big Ten.
Wow. Okay.
And before the Big Ten, they lost. I saw a Ryan Dunleavy story from 2014. They had lost homecoming games to Kent State, the infamous Kent State upset, Tulane, and there was another one. So, if you're going to lose on homecoming, you might as well lose to a team you're expected to lose. That's how I'd spin it.
It also just sets up for Rutgers to be undefeated going into that game, Oregon to be a top 5 team, and College Game Day to finally make its appearance at Piscataway for homecoming.
Wow, you are getting way ahead of yourself. I love it. This podcast is off the rails. All right, wrapping up with big lacrosse win. They stay alive, and people want us to talk about Chloe Timberg. I don't know what happened, but we've gotten multiple requests to talk about the pole vaulting sensation from Rutgers.
She won the Penn relays for the 3rd time. Is what?
That's what happened. You're the track guy. I should have known.
Yes.
There you go.
Penn relays title.
She's got a chance to author herself as one of the most prominent Rutgers athletes of the 21st century.
No doubt.
She is, right?
Yeah.
She won a national championship.
Yeah, I guess she already is. Yeah,
national champion. And she was right there at the Olympic trials. I mean, that would have really been a sensational piece of her legacy if she made the Olympic team as a Rutgers student. That would have been really cool.
There you go.
I think she broke the school record, her own school record this weekend again too. I could be wrong there, but I believe I read that.
Right. So interesting. All right. Anything else, fellas, before we sign off?
It should be a quiet-ish time now, right? There might be some portal additions for football and basketball. I mean, you'd hope basketball makes at least 2 more additions, right? They can fill 15 scholarships, assuming these roster limits are passed. I don't think they'll get more than 13. And I think that means getting another scoring guard, or a scoring guard, I guess. Right. Maybe a wing. And then for football, linebacker and offensive tackle makes sense. But other than that, I think it's going to be a quiet couple months, and hopefully all 3 of us can enjoy a nice, relaxing May.
Never.
How about
Impossible. That? We'll be back. I'm sure we'll be back. Some big crisis will happen, and the 3 of us will be sitting here talking about it, because that's the way the Rutgers Rant rolls. All right. Thanks to everyone for listening. Thanks for your questions, and we'll be back in a few weeks, I hope, to talk about something.